at me. It is early August, and I've just finished reading Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol, which is the third in the Dan Brown Robert Langdon series. I was reading this mostly in the mornings, and then got like right towards the end, and then didn't pick it up again for like 4 or 5 days. And so like the last little bit of this, which is like the last like 4 or 5 chapters, it was a little weird to jump back into that point. But other than that, you know, I'd said this before about some other books, of where like they really feel like airport reads. This really does feel like an airport book. With the other Dan Brown pieces I've read so far, at least, you know, how I feel about them in terms of the structure and things like that, is that they're very much like, they're super in depth about a lot of these other things that are going on, about pieces of art, about pieces of literature, and then and involved in that is like you have multiple pages of descriptions and things like that, whereas this one, The Lost Symbol, has a lot of very, very, very short chapters, right? Which I talked about with, I think, Horse by Geraldine Brooks, of like, it feels like a travel book, right? Of where like you go, you sit down, you have 8 minutes, and so you read 4 pages, and that's a chapter, kind of deal, which is fine, right? It's just it's just a different style of book. So yeah. And then the story, or the symbols and things that are being explored in this one, I think are a lot more like attainable, and not necessarily like something that has to be kind of sought for, with like some of the other ones, right? With the especially with Angels and Demons, right? Because I think Angels and Demons went through and did a lot of focus on art pieces and things that are not necessarily the most tangible or most widely known, right? Da Vinci Code got into a lot more of like things that are very high pieces of art, but are still like fairly well-known pieces of art, and or, you know, fairly well-known pieces of architecture and things. Whereas we have The Lost Symbol, in which these symbols that are being used and the way we go about exploring them, part of it is because I am an American, but they're so well attainable, and they're so well understood, or like talked about in a way, not necessarily all of it, right? Because some of the pieces of art, or like the physical places are so much more mundane in a way. But I think part of that is just because I am an American, right? So yeah, that's that. The whole setup of this, right? We've gone kind of from this, going from very religious focused to very kind of art focused, and well, even Da Vinci Code was very, very religious forward, and then this is about the Masons, right? And it's still very religious forward, but it's it's more so this aspect that I think Dan Brown has been trying to get across in every single book, which is that the ideas of art and science and religion are all inherently the same, right? It is a way for us to express and identify and achieve, right, higher orders, higher powers. And they're just different forms of doing so. And I think this book really spells it out, which is fine, right? You don't always need subtext. You don't always need all these other things, right? You're looking for a good time book, right? And that's what this is. I think, like, it's fun. It's interesting, but it's not going to force you to be super involved in like what are we talking about here, right? All of these things are that there's an attainability to all of this, right? But then I think part of like there's I think a letdown to this, in which like the first two, right, is that there is this sort of like unmasking or unveiling of this like conspiracy or this truth that is really changing the world, and it's up to Robert Langdon to then hold it within himself. And we get to the end of this book, and the truth that gets revealed is the Bible has a deeper meaning, and that the power of thought can manifest itself, right? And it's just like an okay, yeah. So in terms of that, right, this is as interesting. I think that's the best way to describe all of this, right? Is that I do think that this is probably the weakest of all of them to this point. But I think part of that is because it's describing something that I'm not inherently interested in, right? But it's also just like it's not right. Even your villain, right, isn't as interesting as I would like it to be, right? Because in your previous ones, right, you have this kind of this it's an organization that is coming after and trying to either keep things secret or try to reveal secrets, whereas with this one, right, it's all based around the story of one man and his interactions with the world, right? And that is, spoiler alert for a book that came out 20 years ago. But the big twist at the end of all of this is that Malak, who is the antagonist throughout this entire thing, turns out to actually be the son of Peter Solomon, who they thought had been killed in prison, in a Turkish prison, so many years ago, right? And yeah, I guess like that twist is interesting, right? Because it reinforces a lot of this biblical aspects of this story, right? In which you really do have a Jesus figure, Robert Langdon, right? But you also have Solomon. You also have the story of Abraham within this, right? At the very end of do you sacrifice your son for your ultimate belief? And all of these things, right? You have there's just so much going on in terms of this religious aspect. The twist is pretty good, but the idea to me that you have this massive government undertaking and you have this massive secret society that exists that is supposed to be of the wealthiest and the richest and the smartest people in the world, and it gets completely overthrown by one person is rather insane. And it's just like it's the entire setup and everything feels very much just like a, well, I need to figure out a reason for this bad guy to now have some sort of sympathy for everyone else, right? Because I'm trying to remember with Da Vinci Code, right? You have a little bit of redemption for the assassin. I don't remember his name. Specifically in the movie, I know that that they attempt to give him some sort of positive aspect, that there's a realization that he has been betrayed throughout all of this, that he's been lied to about all of this. And in Angels and Demons, right, you have your antagonist, who I also don't remember their name, but is really the best character and the most well-liked character throughout all of this. And you have this kind of redemption storyline that exists for all these characters, and it feels like this is just kind of an insert to try and figure out a redemption story for your antagonist as to why they are the way that they are, right? And I don't think it just hits as well. Yeah. I think looking at all of these so far, the three of them, right? I think what is starting to happen, and what I think will be seen with the next one, Inferno Origins. I think there's a new one that's supposed to come out later this year. But what is occurring is that we are moving away from these are right, the symbolism and the use of art and the use of literature it as a way to further your story is going to become less prevalent, and it's going to be more about it's going to become more about the hunt rather than the end goal, right? Of where, like, I don't know, it just feels like, right, in the first two, you have you have an idea of what you want your end goal to be, and it's the scavenger hunt through all of these things to make this work, right? Versus this one, where I feel like this was very much about the scavenger hunt, and then the ending or the end goal was just kind of there, right? Which I think is not my personal preference, but I think it's fine, right? I don't think there's a problem with, like, this is more about the hunt than using it as a way to get to the end, right? That's Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol. Yeah.